Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir El Azouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will help you to define if you have a significant change within your product. So you may know that with the MDR, there is a transition period for some of the products that are going until 2024. But in Article 120, Section 3, it says mainly that if there is any significant change to your design or intended purpose, then your product is not going anymore through this transition. But a lot of people are asking me, what is a significant change? Is there a guidance? Is there something that can help them to understand that? And I have with me Erik Vollebregt, who will help us to define what is a significant change. And he will really tell us what you have to do or not to do to then continue with your transition period. So Erik, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Nice for having me again, Munir.
I hope you will really help us to define that because, as I've said, I have a lot of people that were asking me, Munir, is this a significant change? How can I define that? Is there a decision tree, something like that? So what can you answer to that?
Well, as usual, as a lawyer, I will have to say it's complicated and it depends.
Exactly.
Because there are decision trees, but there is no official decision tree yet because we've been promised guidance for quite some time on it, and there isn't any. Basically, the only guidance that we have that does anything in interpreting Article 120, Section 3 is the old December 2017 CAMD guidance, and of which we have to wonder whether the CAMD is involved in the first place still, because everything comes out of the MDCG these days. But a lot of different actors have issued guidance. There are various notified bodies that have given their own view on things. Medtech Europe, COSIR have issued a joint paper on it in last year already. So there are a lot of different interpretations out there, and the problem is also that since significant change is a concept that is going to be interpreted by your notified body in the first place. Yeah, my advice to companies is that make sure that you understand how the brain of your notified body works on these things, because that's the first thing you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah, I suppose that if you go to one notified body, a significant change will be different to another one, because as maybe I've said just before, so when we start to record, to discuss about that, it's not like there is an artificial intelligence or there is somebody at the back that says everybody will think the same. We have really a human interpretation, so you have really to convince your notified body that it is or not a significant change.
That's right. Yeah, and then it really depends on who you ask, because, for example, there are even notified bodies like GMAT, for example. They issued a fantastic paper with flowcharts, very detailed, probably very helpful, but that's GMAT.
It's not the same for TÜV Süd, it's not the same for BSI, maybe they will not accept
exactly. And BSI has also issued some guidance, but the BSI's guidance is, I would say, spectacularly vague.
Okay.
If TÜV Süd has said a lot in public about this, they have presented about it in public, so there's sort of, let's say, a shopping list that you can reverse engineer from TÜV Süd's public statements about what they consider a significant change. But that's about it. So if you are a company with MDD or AIMDD certificates, I would say it's vital for you to know what the notified body thinks about these changes, so you still have the opportunity to implement them before the date of application, hopefully, because otherwise you can't implement them afterwards anymore. Any change that is a significant change, you can't implement it afterwards anymore. unless, of course, you want to run the risk that your certificate is invalid, because that's I think, another point that is still quite unclear, legally speaking. Because, of course, as a lawyer, I'm very, very nerdy on these things because they really matter. The legal effect of a significant change is basically not described very well.
Okay.
Because Article 120 says these changes cannot be implemented, right? So then the question is, what is the effect of that? Literally, what does it say? The article, let me look at my other monitor. Provided that there are no significant changes. So that means when this whole discussion started, actually, that's how it started, because Team MB, I think it was back in 2018 or even older, they issued a statement when they were when they were talking about what should the certification agreement look like for surveillance in the in the 2020 to 2024 soft transitional period.
Okay.
Right, because the whole idea was, I mean, if the MDR becomes applicable, then the directives are repealed. So if you have a certification agreement for surveillance under the directives and the directives are repealed, then you need a new certification agreement for surveillance under the zombified directives, as I call them, right? Because first the MDR says we kill the directives, they are gone. Oh yeah, but we resurrect them partially for the purpose of Article 123. So we've got zombified directives. So we need So these notified bodies said we need a surveillance agreement for the zombified phase of the directives. And basically, the legal position is what applies under this certification agreement. And the Team MB notified bodies at the time said, as soon as we smell a significant change, your certificate is invalid immediately.
So it means that you have to anticipate those, so to know them first, to anticipate them, and maybe to start to inform notified bodies before to implement them. Is it correct?
Because of course there's this stage process, right? Because you first of all you need to be talking about a change that you need to notify your notified body of in the first place. So that would be a substantial change in the meaning of the NBOC 2014-3 guidance.
Okay.
Substantial change. So a change you need to tell your notified body about. But then the second step is this change actually a significant change? Because a substantial change would still be possible, provided it is not a significant change. And that is, for example, the way that the Medtech Europe and COSIR guidance document that is available has been set up. You'll probably put that in the show notes, I think. Because that's I think the best guidance that we have at the moment. The notified body guidances like GMED, for example, are interesting too, but that's just their interpretation.
So just one thing. So what is your interpretation of a significant change? So can we have maybe some examples? Because as we've said on the 120 section 3, it says just design and intended purpose, but what does it mean? Is there some example that we can tell the audience now of if you do that, this is considered as a significant change maybe, or if you do that, it's not? So is there some examples possible?
Okay, well, let's say, for example, you have software. Because I think software is it's very nice, sorry, software people, but it's really... Hopefully I'm not creating any bad examples there for people to have their certificates invalidated because of significant change. But let's look at software, because software is a very changing medical device all the time. It's subject to change basically all the time. So a significant change would, I think, for example, be if you add important functionality. That would be a design change, or even an intended purpose change. Actually, a couple of days ago, Monier, we were talking about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's say I have my software out there, my installed base, and I've read the MDCG guidance on cybersecurity. I've listened to Monier's podcast, and I think, oh shit, I should do something about my software. I'm going to do a big update on software because I'm a good manufacturer. My post-market surveillance plan has identified that it's my security is not state of art. I'm going to do a design change for that. Could also be a significant change because the only thing we actually really officially know from the CAMD guidance in terms of significant change is that this guidance says, and I believe it's somewhere in question 20 or something for the MDR guidance, that if you do a design update as a result, as a field safety corrective action, then this is not a significant change.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, we take the software example again. I am a manufacturer. I've had a major security breach, and I decide, okay, I'm going to do a design change to fix this. If you do it as a design change to pursuant to FSCA, it's not a significant change.
Okay.
If you do it because you think, okay, I'm going to up my game in cybersecurity, it is probably a significant change.
Okay, so it's really interesting because then we have exactly the same thing. We have a change of the design, but in this circumstance, it's not a significant change. And in the other one, it is. And then we are falling under the MDR. You have some other examples?
Well, you can also think about, let's say I have a device with animal tissue.
Okay.
Let's say a heparin coated whatever, and then I'm going to change crucial supplier.
Okay.
Because my crucial supplier keels over, but the new supplier cannot provide me heparin to the specific specifications that I need. So I am going to also need to do a little tweaking to the device in order to make it compliant again.
Okay.
It's also a problem. I'm making this extra tweaking step in my example because changing of a crucial supplier, depending on the notified body you ask, may not always be a significant change.
Okay.
Because I've seen some notified bodies say, for example, if you are certain that the raw material that you get from another crucial supplier is exactly the same specifications, then we do not necessarily consider this a significant change because the raw material is the same. Now the problem is, of course, again, who do you ask? Because others may say, actually, if you change a crucial supplier, that is definitely a design change because you are actually getting other raw material.
So it's something that you should ask your notified body before to do that. I mean, if your supplier is stopping to supply you, you have to do something quickly. So it's not like you have to take some time and decide.
I think supplier change is a fantastic example because it will always be a substantial change. Right? This is always something you need to tell your notified body about. But the question is whether it is going to be a significant change.
And each notified body will decide by themselves, or they will say yes or no. They will hear your arguments to that.
Yeah, and preferably you would want to have a very good picture of what it's going to be before you ask the notified body.
Okay. So to prepare that, not just to drop them an email, hey, by the way, I will change my supplier. It will change that. Is it a significant change? It's maybe more having
or how about we've just done this and we are informing you? Because then it might be that you get an email back saying, congratulations, your certificate is invalid now.
So the consequence of those significant change, if you don't anticipate them, immediately your certificate is invalid.
yeah, that's the last position I've seen Team NB take on these matters. Because normally you would expect, and that's also what I would expect to be addressed in MDCG guidance. As a lawyer, my personal grief about notified body decisions is that your legal recourse or against notified bodies is typically not very good, right? Because you can go through the internal appeals procedure first if you don't agree with something. Well, I can tell you I have terrible experiences with that, because guess what? The notified body is always right.
Okay.
Basically always. I think about 90% of the cases in my experience. And then, yeah, you're basically out of luck. Because you'll have and even if they do terrible things, like, for example, completely misinterpret things and they invalidate your certificate before they can actually have the certificate reinstored, sometimes this takes weeks. So with significant changes and a Team MB that says we are going to be really trigger happy with these significant changes, this is not going to be a happy place. I've been doing some research. For example, I've looked at the Team MB updated code of conduct, for example. Nothing about how they're going to work with significant changes in there. So this is something I would say for companies: check your certification agreement and check the appeals procedure in there to know if also the significant change, whether this is actually a decision that a notified body takes, or whether it is a situation that they determine exists. Because if that's the case, then your certificate is invalid immediately. And this is a problem also, for example, in cases where you do things like, again, depending on the notified body you ask, we were talking about crucial suppliers, right?
Yeah.
You have a notified body that lists the supplier on the certificate, then changing the supplier requires a change of the certificate. And there's a lot of debate about whether this is possible in the first place.
Okay.
I remember some notified bodies saying 26 May 2020, midnight, that is the cutoff. Then basically we are throwing our printer out of the window because we cannot print new certificates anymore. This is how you should interpret a significant change.
Okay.
Anything you need to print that would require printing a new certificate to reflect the situation as it is post-change, we will consider a significant change. Now, what I also see is that the notified bodies that were saying that also have come back from that position a bit. You also see that the Medtech Europe and COSIR guidance says, yeah, that would be kind of ridiculous if you could not make administrative changes to a certificate because you can't print new certificates. So that's, I think, a paradigm that has been abandoned. But still, vitally important, understand how your notified body interprets this concept, because you might be really badly surprised by the fact that you think you're in a discussion with them about what you are doing, and then suddenly it turns out that your certificate is gone. And if your certificate is gone, if they made a stupid mistake, it will take them weeks to correct it, so weeks not on the market. Very difficult to explain that to your CEO and your shareholders.
Yeah.
But also, if it turns out that actually they were right in their finding that there was a significant change, your certificate is not only invalid, but also remains invalid. So then the only option you have is to apply for conformity assessment under the MDR.
Okay.
And we know that, of course, notified bodies they are idling all over the place with a lot of capacity to do a conformity assessment for CE mark under the medical devices regulation in a couple of weeks.
So you are there for maybe a month or 2 or 3 or 4 waiting for that.
You can forget about even getting an MDR certificate in a year at the moment. I think it's just not happening. I saw really big manufacturers on LinkedIn go on the record saying we are getting. I don't know if you've seen that as well. Was well, I won't say who it is, but you can probably, if you do a search on LinkedIn, you can find out. But this manufacturer said we are getting formal notices of notified bodies at the moment that all MDR work is suspended pending the MDD and the AIMDD remediation, because otherwise we won't be ready in time. So if you're waiting for an MDR certificate, good luck with that. Maybe that clears up after 26 May, because then they'll probably throw all the capacity that they have onto the MDR certificates. But even then, there will be such a queue for those certificates for everybody that missed the boat that it will still be, you can't expect anything to happen quickly, I think.
Yeah. So just one thing also. So we discussed about the fact that the notified bodies should be informed, etc. If I am a manufacturer and by mistake, if I can say, I'm making this significant change, but I'm not really noticing that this is a significant change and I'm continuing to put the thing on the market, what will be the issue when the notified body will discover that, maybe during a surveillance audit or something like that?
Well, the only conclusion can be that they will find a critical non-conformity and will immediately restrict the scope of your certificate or take the whole certificate back. That's the only consequence possible. Unless you can have a discussion during the audit that this is actually not a significant change. But I would be really prepared, and I think it's a good point you raised there, that also for audit teams to be completely prepared to have a discussion protocol for significant change in your back pocket. Because if the notified body, let's say they do an unannounced audit, and then they look at your design documentation and they say, this is a significant change and we didn't hear about it. Yeah, and then you'd better be able to talk them out of it.
And can they ask you also to recall all the products that you put on the market during that time?
Well, I don't think the notified body can never ask you to do that. They can just say that your quality system apparently hasn't functioned for this. But it is a consequence of the fact that you've been because if you implemented the change, there was a significant change, and your certificate was invalid, then the consequence would be that you've been placing devices placing off-label devices on the market, basically devices that were not covered by the certificate. And that means that you have a difficult discussion with the notified body, but you'll have a more difficult discussion with the authorities.
Exactly.
Because what will happen then is, if you find out that the devices that you've been placing on the market were not covered by the certificate, then you may well need to do a corrective action. And a corrective action, you always need to report to the authorities, and the authorities will have a what the beep reaction. This person has been placing devices on the market without a certificate. Let's go see what these people are doing.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And if you are having many competent authorities also where you are distributing your products, it can be also exponential, if I can say. One last change that we wanted to cover is about a merger and acquisition. I have a company that is transferred to another group. What can happen there if I am during this transition period and I have a class 2A product? So what is the possibilities?
Well, what I typically see is that, of course, in a merger process, kind of cynical remark, sorry, because I've been there a lot of times. Typically, you've got the legal department running a merger, and then you've got the regulatory department saying, hello, there is all kinds of stuff wrong. We need to do this, we need to do that. And then you've got people like me in the background saying, hello, the regulatory department is right. Listen to these people. And then sometimes you get the, okay, now you are the department of shut up. a message from the top, we are doing this merger. And then you say like, okay, fine.
So it's a situation that is happening. It's not
what typically happens, for example, is that you know how medical devices companies typically tend to pick up a lot of different notified bodies in acquisitions.
Yeah.
They typically hate that.
Yeah.
So what they may do, for example, to be efficient is to already make a plan and say upon integration, we kick out the notified body of the target. And then we are going to apply for our to integrate it with the notified body we already have. Changing a notified body, for example, for a certificate in soft transition, you can forget about it. It's not possible. That's like the best example of a significant change I can give. Typically, what also happens quite a lot is that a company will buy a startup, they will integrate it, but they want, of course, the technology of the startup to be more in line with the group technology of the company that bought it.
Okay.
So they implement a design change while they integrate the target that they bought. So that also means that if you are going to, let's say you're a big Medtech company and you grow by acquisitions, right? We all know them. There's quite a lot of those. And you're looking at this nice little juicy startup and you think like, oh, they have pretty technology. I'm going to buy this technology. I will assimilate them into my collective, and then I will have a fantastic ready-made CE mark product because they already have their CE mark. Well, then you need to be very considerate about how you do this, because if as soon as you implement the design change, then you're already at risk of losing the certificate. And I've seen it a lot with software startups specifically, is where as part of the integration into the bigger company, the first thing they'll do is implement design changes in the software, or intended purpose changes, right? Because, for example, they will say, we're not really happy with the way this startup described their intended purpose, so we are going to remodel that a bit, or significant change.
Okay.
And that's really a problem. So it actually even depends, what your integration plan, it influences your integration plan for any target. So it means if you're doing acquisitions at the moment and you are acquiring a company that's reliant on an MDD or an AIMDD certificate, or, by the way, after the corrigendum, a declaration of conformity for class 1 software, because if you have a clever software company at the moment, of course, they will make sure that they are covered by a declaration of conformity, so they can ride out until 2024 under their declaration of conformity as a class 1 medical devices software. But still, any software update that adds functionality can be a significant change. And that also determines even the value of the company. Because if you buy a company that says, hey, look at us, we are, because of course that's what any company will do in merger, right? They will buff themselves up quite nicely, and they look all shiny, and you get these fantastic investment bank confidential information memoranda that say that this company is a complete no-brainer. They are fantastically compliant. They will earn the bejesus out of things for the coming years. But the value is really determined about, can I even do a design change, or can I even change the intended purpose in the coming years? Because if you're on an old certificate, that may be difficult. And so, if your plan with this company is dependent on a significant change, then you have a problem.
So if we are doing that, this merger and acquisition without changing the notified body, without changing the design, without changing the intended purpose of the products, but changing the name of the company now, because it's a change on the certificate, it's not the same name anymore. Will this be considered as a significant change on as your opinion?
Depends on which school of thought you are, whether you threw the printer out of the window at date of application or not. I would say it's probably not a significant change, but if I were a company in the M&A market at the moment, I would form a picture of what a significant change looked like. So if I am looking at a nice juicy little target to buy, that I know which changes will be significant and may invalidate the whole rationale of my merger. Because I've had it a lot with clients where they do other stupid things in mergers and where they end up paying 3 times for the target.
Okay.
Because first they overpay because the target is less compliant than they say. Mm-hmm. Then they pay a second time because they need to do these massive remediation exercises. And they pay a third time because the target is going to be not way as profitable as you hope if they can't be on the market because their certificate is gone. And then you'll be in MDR remediation for a year if you're lucky.
So here, I think with all what we covered now, with all the examples, we have really a great picture of what is a significant change. But we are still waiting for the MDCG guidance. As you said, it's something that should come sooner or later, but I don't know when. I suppose this will be really clarifying all those aspects and providing really a clear view for everybody to know exactly what they have to expect if they are doing any change.
We would hope so, yes.
And there is no date for now. We don't know exactly.
As far as I know, this guidance has not been put out for consultation.
Okay.
So as far as I know, I may be wrong because it also happens that things happen and people do not tell me about it.
Okay.
But as far as I know, there is no pending consultation for this guidance. So this means that either it's not coming this MDCG meeting, or like we had with the PRRC guidance, it will be a total surprise.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think that the PRRC guidance was also one of these guidances that was actually put out without consultation, and it's
we saw the mistakes also inside.
Less than fortunate level of quality. Let's put it like that.
No, it's clear. Okay. So I think, this really helps a lot to understand. As we can say, this is a lot of things that are more an opinion because it depends also on your notified body. It depends on what they think. It depends how you can convince them. We hope that the MDCG guidance will provide more information about what is or what is not a significant change. But be careful, really be careful with this thing because you can put your company really in trouble if you are doing that, or if you think you are not, but you are in reality. So you have really to investigate that and to make a focus on those, on any change that can happen to a company. Maybe a training of your team, of your design team would be really important, that they understand exactly what is a significant change or not, because at the end, they are the ones that are doing that. And they have to understand what are the consequences of this. Okay.
Train the monkeys in the legal department as well, because they will have absolutely no idea about how this works. So let's organize a training maybe on all this when the MDCG guidance will be happening, because I think a lot of people needs to know that. Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so Erik, thank you very much for all that. For the people on the audience, so look at the show notes. I will get all documents, all the links regarding the guidance that we talked about today, and then I will put that on the show notes so that you can look at them or check what is available, maybe for your reference. But as we've said, everybody is releasing their own guidance, but we are waiting really for the MDCG guidance to make the kind of a good information about what is a significant change. Okay, Erik, so really thank you for your help. Thank you for all the information, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.